As Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, head of the cabinet, I can tell you it is very, very difficult at this stage in our development, and given what is going on around us and the history of what has happened to some people, to get people of quality to agree to serve in public service in Trinidad and Tobago. Of course, there's no shortage of persons who want to serve, who want to go on a board, who want this. But most times, those are the persons that you don't want anywhere near public interest and public monies. So, as I say that, I want to appeal to others in the national community who have skills, who have talent, who have time, and who are patriotic. And if you are asked to serve either by the president, the prime minister, or wherever, if you make that contribution, you can go to bed at night, waking up next morning knowing that you are helping to build Trinidad and Tobago. Today, I am particularly pleased at the input that NIDCO is making to our infrastructure development. You would have seen NIDCO at the forefront of this reorganized project. You would have seen NIDCO at the forefront of our issues on the port with the ferries and the vessels and so on. And you would continue to see NIDCO and Mr. George and his board and his management and their team doing what we expect them to do, which is work in the interests of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Ladies and gentlemen, as I drove down here this morning on that piece of the new road which has brought us to this location, I was very pleasantly surprised at the quality of work done in the time frame that we've got it done. I want to congratulate the contractor and his team. I want to congratulate the team of workers who are here with us this morning in this function and who are every day and every night on this project. Because I know you get paid, and some of you get paid very well. But it is your output, your delivery, your skills, your muscle, and sometimes, hopefully, your belief that you are the best that could give us what we know will be probably the best piece of road constructed in Trinidad and Tobago. It's been a difficult journey, but we can do it. I distinctly recall I was in the opposition, as leader of the opposition, when there was a meeting between the voices of the Joint Consultative Council to the government of the day, before the ink was dry on that scandalous OAS contract. And the local voices were saying to the government then, the Prime Minister and her team, do not award this contract to a single contractor. Break it up into pieces. By so doing, you will allow local contractors an opportunity to bid. Because the way the contract has come in, from an estimate of 3.5 billion to 5-odd billion, it automatically, by its size alone, rule out any local contractor from being the winner of that project. So they were asking the government then to break it into pieces, to give the local contractors an opportunity to bid and to bring control to the various components of the work. For reasons best known to them, and for reasons described by Minister Young this morning, they insisted on awarding a contract for over $5,000 million to one foreign contractor to be funded out of the current account of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. Meaning, they set about to pay for that contract out of the monies coming into the government on a daily basis. Explaining is as if you are going to build $1 million house and you don't take a mortgage, but you're billing it from your salary at the end of each month. That's what it was. And the reason why they did that was to create opportunities for corrupt practice. And I say that today without fear of contradiction, because that is what the facts have borne out. How in God's name could Minister Rambachan and his team explain the state of this contract on the 4th of September, at the end of a general election campaign? An election is due on Monday morning, but on Friday, you find and take out the single article in a contract which will allow the contractor to escape termination by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. How can they explain that? It had to be an intent to do what was not in the interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And by doing that, you created the opportunity for legal fight and legal challenge, hoping that an incoming government would not have the appetite or the testicular fortitude to stand up to the contractor and to go around the world's capitals fighting them in their banks, because they believe that the government of Trinidad and Tobago would not have what it takes to reverse that. This morning you would have heard from Minister Stuart Young that we didn't only have the testicular fortitude, but we had on the boots to kick them where it hurts. And I want to congratulate Minister Young and his team at the Office of the Attorney General for acting in the interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Ladies and gentlemen, Minister Young gave us this morning a short summary that should be disturbing to every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. Every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago who would have heard this morning the incontrovertible facts of what happened on this project and how a government of Trinidad and Tobago behaved towards the people of Trinidad and Tobago should be concerned. But of course, it's about OAS, and it's about the contract to point 14. Ladies and gentlemen, we do have similar problems with our local contractors. As Prime Minister, with the responsibility of leading the cabinet, we decided to break up this contract into packages and to support our local contractors in doing it piece by piece, bit by bit, and spreading the work among as many contractors as can win bids in the arrangement. And we are very proud today that our local contractors are rising to the occasion and is delivering this project, building a highway from San Fernando to Point 14. That we now have on the table. That is happening. But we have another problem. The same way for the last 24 months, we have had to, or we were drawn into legal battles with a foreign contractor who had the gall to want to fight to win when they were in the wrong, having in their control millions of dollars of our taxpayers' money, hoping to use law and courthouse to get away with it. We have similar arrangements with some of our local contractors. What do we do then? Do we say it's okay to fight OAS and win and congratulate ourselves now? But if local contractors are taking the same position, arising out of the same government's behavior, what do we do? Well, let me tell you what we do. We are going to defend the interests and the opportunities of local contractors to the hilt, and we are doing that. But we are also going to resist local contractors from trying to do to us what OAS was trying to do under the UNC government. Ladies and gentlemen, as I speak to you now, there are a number of instances where upon coming into office, we have found that in the handling of a series of contracts around the government, some of our local contractors were treated more generously than they ought to have been treated, and that is putting it mildly. Some of those contractors have attempted to sue the state, and in examining the situations, those of us who are managing the public interest, we have found that the suits require resistance, meaning that we don't agree with the contractor's claims. The contractors, some of them have gone to court. Some of them are expecting that the government would leave it alone. There are other situations of open, outright corrupt practice in the award of contracts and payments made to certain favorable contractors. And the government, seeing those facts, have a duty and a responsibility to treat with it. Because we on this table, there are 3 ministers on this table, and every one of us, before we could have entered the office and pick up a pen to sign a document or to read anything, we had to take an oath of office. And that oath says that we are to act without fear, without favor, without malice, and without ill will, Today, I want to give the national community from Charlottesville to Cedros, from Galeota to Carnage, the assurance that your government of Trinidad and Tobago, under my leadership, will act without fear, without favor, without malice, and without ill will. And in the same way that we have made opportunity available to local contractors to do this project from here on in, is the same way we are going to stand up in the halls of court and defend the public interest against contractors who believe that wrong is right and right is wrong. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't act capriciously. For the last year, we have raised these issues with a number of contractors. In fact, there are people in the public domain who are saying, how can the government be concerned and be reporting about wrongdoing of this nature? But yet, the government is still giving contracts, awarding contracts to contractors who are in fact so pointed. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot and we would not act capriciously. So, before we were able to put together in clear and unambiguous terms the state and the nature of our complaints, we have allowed the systems to proceed, and some contractors have gone ahead. We are now having opportunity to many contractors, large and small, and we are getting the benefit of competition. On the Curab Highway, the Curab interchange on the CR Highway, the engineers' estimate on that project in the Ministry of Works was over $500 million. We have gone out to tender. The contract is now underway for $221 million. Question you have to ask yourself is where that $300 million was going under the old arrangement. And why is it that competition could not have given us that benefit before, but you're getting it now under these arrangements? As we go to defend the public interest, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, through the Office of the Attorney General, we have gone for sound legal advice. As Minister Young has just told you, our victories against OAS in recovering that $900 million was because we have gone seriously along the road of sound legal advice to be able to defend ourselves and the public interest of Trinidad and Tobago in the courts in London and elsewhere, because we have taken sound legal advice and we had a case to defend in the court, because that is where it usually will end. Before we take any position in Trinidad and Tobago, we have also gone for sound legal advice. With respect to those contractors who have chosen to oppose the government in the court, or who have been deemed to have conducted themselves in a particular way which has been detrimental to the public interest with respect to the award of contracts and the receipt of overpayments and so on, it is the duty of the government of Trinidad and Tobago to challenge those contractors. And we intend to do so. If the contractors are prepared to accept that there's wrongdoing and they are prepared to engage in the appropriate restitutions, lawyer to lawyer, some of these matters we can settle outside of the court. If they want to fight in the court, then we'll go to the court. The documents will be laid there, the cases will be made there, and the court will rule as to who is right and who is wrong and what is open to the government of Trinidad and Tobago. We have absolutely no qualms in doing that. And let me tell you something. I have no issue with any particular contractor. And I have no horse in the race for any particular contractor. I have friends who are contractors, I have neighbors who are contractors, and I have fellow citizens who are contractors. But the same way we hold OAS's nose to the grindstone, we will hold local contractors' nose and fingers to the grindstone as well, because you are citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, and you more than OAS must have a responsibility that right things happen in Trinidad and Tobago and corruption is eliminated from the practice in Trinidad and Tobago, because you are citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. As I speak to you now, we have 3 senior counsel advice, 1 from London and 2 from Trinidad and Tobago, advising the government as to how to proceed with this matter. In the coming week or 2, the Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago will make an appropriate statement in the Parliament as to how the government intends to proceed on this matter. Today, you heard from Minister Young. It is not normal in situations like this to have such a lucid presentation on the business of Trinidad and Tobago. But we had to do it to you and let you know, because there are those outside of this government, outside of this gathering, who are pretending that they had served the public interest in a way that should allow them to come back into office. Well, as far as I'm concerned, after that kind of behavior, if you want them back in office, you can have them anytime. But in the meantime, the government that I lead will ensure that the interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago is paramount and come first every time. In allocating portfolios and seeing the work that has to be done, it is not by accident that I have put Minister Young with the full ministerial office and cabinet rank in the office of the Attorney General, because we have serious legal issues to deal with. And I have put him as minister in the office of the Prime Minister, because I, as Prime Minister, I need to be monitoring this if the people's interest is to be protected. And today he spoke to you for the first time in his capacity as Minister of Communication, because between the Attorney General's office, the Prime Minister's office, and communicating with the people of Trinidad and Tobago, that is the only way that you, the people, will be engaged in this issue as we are engaged in the fight to make sure that what is right and what is wrong is put right. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot develop our country in the capricious way that we have been doing, in the corrupt way that we have been going. Because if you ask me today, what are the 3 issues that threaten Trinidad and Tobago's progress and its potential more than any other? The first thing I will tell you is that there are people who live in certain parts of the country, large numbers of people, and large sections of the country who are not sufficiently integrated into the country's economy, largely because of the infrastructural arrangements that exist in their neighborhoods. And that is what these kinds of projects are seeking to do, to bring those people into the national economy so that they can contribute more to the national economy and also benefit more from the national economy. And the other issue is the whole question of us being able to ensure that we act in unison when we look at the issues that we are engaging in Trinidad and Tobago. And thirdly, and probably most importantly, is that we need to reject corruption as a way of life in the business of Trinidad and Tobago. There is just too much corrupt practice in Trinidad and Tobago. And government money is just too easily had by persons, whether they are public servants, politicians, and even pastors, who engage in accepting public favors and public monies in ways that will embarrass them if the public knows what is going on. It is not that I'm a preacher. It is not that it is for me to tell you where your morality lies. I'm simply asking you to do not encourage corrupt practice in Trinidad and Tobago. There's a cost to it, huge cost. And the cost is to keep a large part of the population in perpetual poverty. On one project, we're coming in $300 million different between the engineer and the contractor's estimate. It raises the question, what kind of engineer estimate was that? What kind of engineer estimate? I could tell you last week, there was a particular project, and within hours of the project being sanctioned in the department, one contractor had already known what the engineer's estimate was. And therefore, he has an advantage over all the other contractors. And of course, he knows exactly where to pitch it. And the taxpayer takes the umbrella. This is the kind of conduct that will not be tolerated. And let me tell you something. I'm not inventing any wheels here, you know. Governments challenging contractors in defense of the public interest is commonplace in the United States. In America, it's common weekly or daily news that the American government has either challenged Grumman, Lockheed, General Electric, Raytheon, any of these big companies, usually doing big contracts, mainly defense-type contracts for the government. But the government investigators would find that this has been overpriced, that has been overpriced, this has not been delivered, and so on. And what the government does is to challenge the contractor. And if the contractor responds by acknowledging what was wrong, the government gets restitution in the public interest. If, on the other hand, the government decides that this is a matter to go to the court, the government has no hesitation in taking the contractor to court. It doesn't mean that the contractor no longer becomes a contractor. It means that the public interest is fought for and defended. And at the end of the day, what was right remains right, and what was wrong is corrected. In the case of international agencies who are funding projects around the world, many of them here in the Caribbean, if it is found that there is wrongdoing on the part of a contractor and the wrongdoing is sufficiently serious, these agencies simply blacklist the contractor either completely or usually for a period of time. So there are penalties for misconduct. If there's collusion between contractor and those who evaluate the contracts, if you have the fortitude to take it where it's supposed to go, there are remedies. And this government will seek those remedies if the circumstances warrant. You would have heard today about a contract for $5.5 billion in Trinidad and Tobago. It is this contract. It was the single largest contract and remains so, the single largest contract ever entered into by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. Would you believe that the negotiations around that contract took place over 3 days? 3 days. And then we agreed. And Minister Young told you, and I will insist and ensure that he tells you the other side of the story with respect to the land acquisition. Because this project is an object lesson of how it should never have been done. Thankfully, we are on the right track today, and the work is progressing. I want to give the contractors the assurance that they have the government support. Because we are not making jokes. I am chairing a subcommittee of the contracting fraternity. And the main issue we've had one contact cut so far. And the one issue that we have attended to so far is the question of monies owed by the government to contractors. You are familiar with the figure of 4.5 billion. It is said that the government owes contractors 4.5 billion. This has been going on for the longest while. Well, as chairman of that committee, I have asked the contractors to provide to me as a way forward the list of all the contractors, which project they are owed money on and how much they are owed. I am still waiting for that information, and as soon as it becomes available to me, I would let you know what has been submitted to this committee. Everything is on the table as we go forward. We have nothing to hide. We have nobody to penalize for penalizing someone's sake. We have everybody to be encouraged. And as our contractors continue to show their mettle and their prowess in contracting, as we continue to develop the country's infrastructure, whether it is in the south, in the east, or in Tobago, what we are doing here bodes well for the future of the local contracting fraternity. There's opportunity, there's benefit, and hopefully there's prosperity for all. Thank you for coming out, thank you for working hard, and thank you for supporting the initiatives of Trinidad and Tobago.